So although I'm behind the scenes, very much acquainted with the whiskies. So yeah, I'll be hosting with Auntie tonight. I'm super psyched.
Well, welcome. I think today's actually quite special, not only because it's basically Christmas, as well. We've got two behind the scene pour and sippers finally live.
Yes. Oh my gosh, we do. Faces finally to the masses.
That's exactly it. We'll just need Giovanna next as well. And then we're all good. So I can see a lot of your comments coming in already. Steve Coleman Williams, I've just started the advent calendar, one for tonight to warm me up. Evening all, Anthony Mullins. Evening, Anthony. Malcolm Tucker, good evening, fellow sippers. Unfortunately, I won't be taking part in the tasting this evening as my box has not been delivered as a courier.
Oh, no.
We are very sorry about that. We will try and make that up to you. David Walcock, evening all, loved the socks. Happy festivities.
Yes.
Yes.
Everyone's got their socks on.
So, have you got your socks on?
I have, but they're underneath another pair of fluffy socks because my flat is quite cold.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as well. But you should have got these lovely. Here's one I made earlier, two I made earlier, one pair. That you should have got in your boxes this month for our Christmas treat. And we have other Christmas treats for you because we've got a competition at the end of today to win a fantastic prize. Jess, can you tell us more about that?
Yes. So if you stick around to the end, then we have got one question, only one. That it's quite, I asked Andy it and he did not even get it close. So
I would well out.
And the winner will get to choose a bottle from the Pour and Sip store. So if you stay around to the end, one, you'll find out a fun fact about Pour and Sip, of course, and two, you might get to get your own bottle of whatever you want. So
that sounds amazing. My guess is that Mike Pizarro or Green Tea is Green is going to win. Two of our regular sippers, so I think they're going to be the guys in there. Ian Jambo Rain, evening all, back for one more time. Sadly, it's my last box this month. Ian, that is absolutely tragic. We would miss you greatly, an absolute regular. Yeah. Mike Pizarro is just opening the drams, and I must say the Mannochmore smells divine. It does, absolutely. Right, let's talk about the order of proceedings tonight, because that is important. So we are going to be starting with the whiskey, the Butterscotch, and we will be interviewing Jake for that one. And then we're going to move on to Tamnavulin with Erin. I did get that right, didn't I?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, Erin. And then we'll be going to Glen Moray with Emma. And then Mossburn Mannochmore with Stuart. And finally, Deanston with Luke. As tonight we are going to be tasting 5 drams. Please make sure you sip responsibly and make sure that you take the time. If you want to save any for later, please do. Or if you just want to have a nose of one and then you want to save one for later, please do. And please, please, please get involved with us. Please ask all your questions. Make sure you get all your tasting notes to us. If you are new here and this is your first tasting, make sure you get involved. We do not bite and we love to hear your tasting notes and your feedback and your questions.
No such thing as a silly question.
No,
this is what guests are here for.
Yes, that's exactly it. I'll be asking many silly questions, so there's no such thing. That makes no sense, but anyway. It's like, right, I think we should start. Stuart Pilling saying, what socks? Sorry, they should have been in the bottom of your box. Steve Coleman Williams is saying you need more whiskey if you're cold.
Well, it's in the perfect place.
That's exactly it. My house is quite cold as well, so I was hoping that.
And Auntie Mellons has got his Lefroy cat, so he's really kissed out on some Pour and Sip merch.
Okay, so his Lefroy cat has Pour and Sip socks on. He is ready to pour and sip. On that note, I think we should start with our first guest, who is Jake. Woo! Drum roll for Jake. Here he is. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well, very well. Yeah, another face from behind the scenes of Pour and Sip emerging tonight. But
we will get into that, but we're going to say bye to Jess for now, and she will be back to ask questions for Glen Moray. So see you in a bit, Jess. Okay, Jake, this feels weird. We're not backstage. So talk to us. Sorry, Peter Gilmore's just asked, where is Christy? Christy is judging the Icons Awards, unless I'm mistaken.
She's at some whiskey awards tonight. Yeah, exactly. So sadly couldn't join us, but
she sadly couldn't join us, and we're sorry about that. But she will be back in January, and she'll be better than ever for sure. So, but talking about Pour and Sip and people who work behind the scenes, Jake is with us today. So, Jake, can you tell us what you're doing here?
Yes. So we have the first dram of the night is rather exciting grain that we'll get onto. But that is from Atom and Atom Labs, which is kind of part of the same family of companies as Pour and Sip and Master of Malt. And that's where I work with my many hats, working across lots of different areas. So unfortunately, the sort of enfant terrible Sam Simmons behind this whiskey couldn't be here either, because he's at his own Christmas party. But I'm here as a hopefully adequate replacement.
Perfect. Well, welcome, Jake. So talk to us firstly a bit about yourself and how you got into role in whiskey and working for Atom.
Yeah, so I've been at at Master of Malt for over 11 years now. Sort of ever since I left uni, I've been working there in so many different positions, from production, worked on the trade side for a while, worked in editorial and content, then sort of like more generally in marketing and campaigns and project management, and anything that keeps you around delicious whiskey while the sort of that company was growing and doing many different things. But yeah, obviously we've got sister companies as well, from that boutique whiskey company or the many fun things that Labs produce, which aren't kind of under the Master of Malt banner, but lots of tasty things there.
Well, today we're trying from the And Whiskey range. So talk to us a bit about that range, because I'm sure there's many drams. I think our Pour and Sippers would have got a free bottle, I think, a while ago.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, if they've been with us a long time. I think we had. Did we have one of the seaweeds?
I think so. Yeah.
Possibly another Christmas tasting.
Yeah.
I just realised I've got. Speaking of many hats, and I'm already the most festive person I think possibly tonight, but I realised I haven't put my Christmas hat on.
Yeah. And it's go, guys. I can only apologise for my lack.
Let's go full Christmas.
I'm not the Grinch, I promise. But Jake has come festively prepared and looks amazing. So, actually, though, okay, yeah. So, yeah, there are a couple of questions here. But talk to us firstly about And Whiskey and what the range is.
Yeah, so like I said, there's many zany kind of ideas coming out of Afton Labs, but one of them was, a label that was just no nonsense. And originally it was the Seaweed and Eons and Digging and Fire, is it? I mean, they've all quite a mouthful. But yeah, so that was an Isla 10-year-old, but we're just a straightforward label, great price point, and that did really, really well. So so it's extended to, I think we've got there's a space side is oak and palomino and oxidation. I think there's a Christmas cake and got a note up here somewhere. Let's have a look.
Cinnamon, wasn't it? That one.
Christmas cake and dark chocolate and medjool dates and cinnamon. Yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely. So and there's even some American ones actually. But this butterscotch and vanilla, it's an aged grain, which is well exciting.
That's cool. One thing I'm interested. I mean, do you come up with the name first? Go right. We're going to get this kind of flavour out of the whiskey. This is what, does that come second?
I guess they're not entirely second, because they're all kind of classic, kind of evocative, either how something's produced or the flavour profile. I think we tried to move away from being completely like esoteric and a lot of them are sort of more flavour directed now. Sure. Just to help you sort of understand exactly what it is. But it's just they've all just got that straightforward like label and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to trying this one, I have to say, because the smell of it. I mean, Christy would be dying here with this beautifully smelling.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah.
This is a 30-year-old blended grain whiskey. But for those of us who don't know and may not know the difference, talk to us the difference between grain and malt in general. Yeah,
sure. So, malt whiskey is, it's malted barley. You're talking those romantic pictures of big pot stills. And that's like single batch. Exactly what you think of when you think of a classic sort of romantic Scottish distillery.
Mm-hmm.
Grain whiskey is not the opposite entirely, but kind of on the surface, because you've got very efficient, usually these column stills that can be run continuously. They're cheaper to run, cheaper raw materials, different cereal. So you're talking maize or wheat. Usually wheat, actually, these days in grain distilleries. But it's just bloody tasty. If you get one of these, a really good, like, well-aged bottling. I mean, this is
One thing
30-year-old whiskey and under 50 quid in the pour and sip store at the moment, which is
exactly what I was going to say.
Right?
I think grain whiskey definitely gives you the chance and the possibility to try much older whiskey at a very reasonable price point, and that's good. And there is a bit of snobbery going, oh, it's not single malt, it's not blended malt, whatever. But that is really missing the point for me, because this is a completely different thing. And just because it's cheaper definitely doesn't mean that it's worse. And also this gives you the chance to try something old. Like tonight's is 30 years. We had a very old grain whiskey a while back on Pour and Sip, didn't we? I think, was it Cameron Brig, something like that?
It was a Wireworks one, wasn't it? It was very popular. I think I was a 29-year-old. So this was just a shade older.
Yeah, I'm just going to read out a couple of the comments firstly. Jake doesn't do full bottles of whiskey, just 1,000,001 tasters. #impressive, says Steve Coleman. So, yeah, Ian Turner, pleased to be back for a few months away. Emma Walton, hi, all excited for these and using my real identity today. Okay, your Uncle Vanya. Yeah, we got the Aeons. Is it? So yeah, your Uncle Vanya, but we want more. Okay, so there's a few tasting notes coming in for this one. Jake, is there anything you can kind of reveal to us about the kind of production process of this, or what is involved in it? I know it's mostly a secret.
Yeah, they're not really. Again, it's that sort of no nonsense label that's just across the entire range. Some of them probably do have to be sort of secret bottlings. Others kind of less so, but it's just that kind of no nonsense theme across. So actually, I can tell you a reasonable amount about what goes into this one. Excitingly, I will just double check my notes. So I'm not like forgetting percentages and things. So yes, this is 75% of it is North British, 1988 refill butts and barrels.
Okay.
So sort of different North British sort of whiskies there. 70.5% is Girvan, and 7.5% is Invergordon. Again, there's kind of a sort of a bit of a mix of sort of refill and first fill in there as well. So you're
that
kind of a good blend of some kind of the bigger grain producers, I guess. But yeah, obviously all over 30 years old.
That is impressive stuff. So there's quite a few tasting notes coming in here. David Stanton saying honeycomb, red grape, immensely buttery, orange peel, polished oak, and a touch of floral spring breeze. That's wonderful. That sounds like an and whiskey title.
That's nailing it. I mean, that kind of buttery note is what you're looking for from grain. But I think this one, I don't know. I think it comes from the North British, but it's got real honey edge for me. Yeah.
So I think so. I did see that somewhere, someone mentioning that in one of the tasting notes. So yeah, I mean, obviously with the grain whiskey, you tend to amplify those very creamy notes, the buttery notes, as you're saying, these kind of sweeter notes, the kind of corn notes as well. The buttered popcorn is often a note that I get in grain whiskies. So you should be getting more of those. And these are, we can see in everyone's tasting notes. Ian Jambo Rain smells like a mango and vanilla cheesecake with a buttery biscuit base. Jeff Whiskey says one of the best pairs of sleep socks. That is amazing to know. Always going to sleep with Paul and Sip in sight. TACD, I still have some of the Christmas cake and ETC. That's what everyone's going to short it to. This one and ETC. Seaweeds ETC. And I bought one last year, one of my favourites. Your Uncle Vanya, the Christmas Atom, the Jewel Dates one is lovely. Steve Coleman Williams, subtle nose, fresh donuts with tropical fruit jams. Peter Gilmore, that tastes lovely with a bit of warmth aftertaste. Lol. Stuart Pilling, I got the Christmas cake one last year. It was very good. Simon, when this was opened, it had a sweet popcorn nose. As it breeds, it becomes far more delicate. Agree with that. Mike Pizarro, very, very delicate nose. Some buttered popcorn toffee. Steve Coleman Williams, can see the popcorn notes, but it's far sweeter to me. Panda Bear, toffee, nice. Ian Jambo Rain knows Christy will be disappointed to be missing this grain whiskey. She absolutely will be.
No doubt. This will be her jam for sure.
Ian Turner, very, very smooth, beautiful. Ian Jambo Rain, the previous old grain we had was the Glaswegian 29-year-old. Well, there you go. And Jim Glantz has got a question for you, Jake. He's saying, why does grain whiskey have that sweet note?
There's a few reasons. So I guess it's primarily the core material again. You're using a different grain, but also it's the production. You're distilling it to a very high percentage. So you can distill grain distillery up to, I think it's 94%, which you're only like 1% or 2% below vodka at that point. So you're taking out a lot of the flavors that aren't going to be that kind of that sweet top note stuff. But yeah, then it develops in the cask. I'm about to go off on a wandering tangent about texture and things because that is important too. But yes, some of that sweetness, of course, will come from the American oak and the long aging.
It is sweet, particularly instantly on the early arrival of this, but actually the finish is quite spicy.
I mean, again, you get that from some of the cask. I mean, I think there are some sort of like richer, darker notes in there, from the honeys and almost like rum-like.
Yeah, very, very much so. It's not like for me, it is creamy, and there is that butterscotch note. Obviously, it sounds lame saying it, but it's actually not hugely on that real creamy kinds of grain whiskey side. There is like a much darker element. You're saying that kind of ginger
sometimes
note.
I'll have a grain whiskey and all you get is like Werther's Originals. And
that's exactly it. Yeah,
that's kind of what you want sometimes, but I think there is a bit more going on here.
This has got like a kind of marmalade note, but they're kind of like a bittery kind of marmalade note for me as well. It's really complex. It's actually really nice. Anthony Mullins, to me, the papery finish is very subtle. Mike Pizarro, I'm becoming a bigger fan of single grain than single malt. Just remember that this is a blended grain, this one, because it hasn't come from just one distillery. It's 3 distilleries that have been used for this one. So that is the difference. I think Masthouse...
it's still a grain whiskey.
Still a grain whiskey. I think the Masthouse has been the most drinkable bottle this year. In Turner, does a grain whiskey not include any barley?
Actually, no, it does include sort of like 10%, possibly a bit more, depending on the distillery. Basically, you need the enzymes from the malted barley in the distillation process. So there is some in there.
Remember, a malt whiskey can only have 100% malted barley. That is it. Whereas grain whiskey can use all sorts of grains, really. So that is as well the big difference. Jim Glancy, this is so dangerously drinkable. Ian Jambo Rain, very nice on the palate, but feels like it could do with a bit more oomph. TACD, again, this is dangerously easy drinking. Mike Pizarro's got a nice bitter aftertaste I can't quite place, like grapefruit or pomegranate. Yeah, this is exactly what I'm saying. It's really nice, and it kind of makes it differ from many grain whiskies that kind of go for that kind of sweeter, buttery note. There is that kind of spice to it. TACD, I'm going to need a bigger whiskey shelf. David Stanton, waxy peels from the nose return with layers of vanilla, cinnamon, gingerbread, and treacle for company. Very nice, like this one. Steve Coleman Williams, Lovely's Terry's Chocolate Orange. Oh, I love Terry's Chocolate Orange. There's nothing more with a thick, buttery warmth as it goes down. That's amazing stuff. Jake, I'm getting a bit conscious of the time because I want to stick to yours.
Yeah, of course.
That you made.
I mean, I don't think this group need converting to the
grain whiskey train.
The grain whiskey.
It's
delicious stuff, especially at this age, and a few good casks, and and I guess the final thing on the and whiskey side is that there's more coming. There's already some sort of mashups of existing labels. I've got one here that's the seaweed and Christmas cake from last year, which I think is still available. But there's a lot more of that kind of business coming. So if you're interested in peaty stuff mixed with stuff you wouldn't expect, keep an eye out. But yeah, I mean, this grain's great, and it's in the store at a great price. So I
was about to say, what is it priced at in the Pour and Sip store?
In the Pour and Sip store, I think it's like $49.95 or something. It's like
that is outrageous. A 30-year-old whiskey, great.
Yeah, with your members discount, that's
members discount under 50 quid. That's outrageous. Stuart from Mossburn saying, "I love seaweed and Christmas cakes." There you go. That is that. I've not tried that. Yeah, I didn't even realise that was a thing. If I'm completely honest,
you have to get on it, Andy.
I'm definitely going to have to get on it. I know some people who might know how to get me. Right, guys. Thank you so much for us, Jake. And your work doesn't finish here, does it? Because you're going to be moderating comments, I'm sure, at some point.
Back behind the scenes, yeah.
Thank you. Cheers, Jake. And that was a great way to start. So I'm going to Oh no, I'm not. I'm doing the next one. So that was a great way to start. Peter Gilmore, is it too late to ask Santa for a bottle? Never too late to ask Santa for a bottle. Steve Penn Williams, Andy, your eyes, I don't know if it's your off screen, but your eyes look tonight like they could rival Paul Hollywood's. Thank you very much, Steve. Often people comment on my wonderfully crystal blue eyes, so I'm pleased that finally the Pour and Sippers are mentioning this. So yeah, we are moving on next very swiftly because I'm very conscious of time to Tamnavulin. I'm pretty convinced I got that right. Yeah, and I'm going to welcome Aaron to the stage.
How are we doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Very good. I was also lost in your crystal blue eyes there for a little while.
Oh, thank you very much. Made me blush. They are very nice. I'm joking. Whereabouts are we talking to you from today?
So I'm coming to you from the very middle part of England. I'm in the Midlands, just outside of Warwick. So not a very Scottish sounding accent. A very odd sounding name, but not a very Scottish sounding accent. But I've been working with White Mackay now for a good couple of years, so I know their stuff quite well and up and down quite often as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, on that note, talk to us a little bit about yourself, your journey into whiskey, and how you found yourself in your current role.
So I like to joke. So I went to university to do music. I didn't quite know what I was going to do with myself once I finished that, and I started working my life in alcohol. I was literally a waitress in a cocktail bar. So I started off as a glass collector in a cocktail bar, and I think it probably did me a good service actually, because I started literally from the very bottom rung, and then because it was a cocktail bar rather than a traditional boozer, I was quite interested in flavors. And from there, I just started working in, wine shops, whiskey shops, spirit shops, all this kind of thing. I've always been interested in flavors. Effectively, I've kind of just found my way somehow through this career that I seem to have built for myself just by wanting to taste lots of really nice things. And I've somehow turned it into a job. So I've been working now in whiskey for 5-6 years or so, but previously had a wine background. Before that was just all kinds of spirits, and yeah, my life has just always been defined by somehow falling in and out of the spirits industry. So it's been a good ride. I've really enjoyed it, but I think I've really found a home for myself with whiskey. I really enjoy it. It's for me one of the most interesting and dynamic spirits that are out there, and the fact that you can get so many flavors from what is essentially the same three things done ever so slightly differently, and you have such wildly different results. It fascinates me, to be honest with you.
And that's why we have stuff like Pour and Sip, and everybody is fascinated, but just people are so fascinated by it. So we've tried a lot of whiskies. I'm not going to tell you how many, because obviously that's part of our question for tonight for our competition. But we've had whiskies from all over the world, literally from far out places you would never.
It's phenomenal stuff. Absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I remember back in the day when Calvados won the award and kind of blew the world of whiskey apart, effectively. Yeah. And everyone was gobsmacked that a whiskey that was, I mean, the factory wasn't even built when that won the award compared to some of the whiskies it was going up against, and it just literally changed the script. And we started to realise that actually there's whiskey from all corners of the world that can be enjoyed, and they're totally different flavours, but they're phenomenal stuff.
Absolutely. Well, talking of whiskey and why you're here, you're talking to us about Tamnavulin. So talk to us a bit about the distillery itself and its kind of checkered past as well, and how it ended up being a silent distillery, mothballed for years, and where it is now.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, it's not one of those pretty kind of postcard distilleries you'll find, which has got those big copper pot stills, and it's these, this wonderful place tucked away in the Highlands. We are based in the Speyside region, and I think by a gnat's whisker, we're the youngest distillery here. So 1966 was when it was opened.
What a year! It was a brilliant year for whiskey.
What a year! Who knows? Brilliant. Maybe it can be repeated again. We'll see. Got to get through Saturday first. My wife's French as well, so it's going to be quite an interesting.
Oh God!
Yeah, this household is going to be quite a tense place on the weekend. So we opened in 1966 actually just down the road from Glen. So that originally if you walk around the distillery still, you can see on the gates and old fences it'll say Tamnavulin Glen. So it's in the village of Tamnavulin. But we don't actually take our water source from Glen. We use the Glen River for cooling water, but we actually use our processed water from deep underground stills. But it was originally conceived not to be a small boutique style independent, pot still whiskey. It was designed for blends, because blends were, reigning supreme back in the 60s. And it kind of fell into, unfortunately, blends didn't really kind of carry on that trend. And then if you remember in the 80s, it kind of just sort of dropped off, and whiskey wasn't really flavour of the month. So we have been closed, like most whiskey distilleries. You're not really a distillery if you've been closed at least once or twice in your career. So we closed in 1995 and opened for literally 3 weeks in 2000. That was only to make sure that all the equipment was still working and running. And it closed again because it wasn't really the demand for the spirit. Because originally the reason we had this distillery put together was there was a call out for this really lovely, consistent, clean, crisp Speyside malt that can be used for blending. So for a long period of time, Tamnavulin was used in white Mackay, but we also use it as what you call reciprocals. So within the industry, it's really common to use whiskey from one distillery that will swap with another, and we literally swap barrels. It's an IOU, and you can use that for different kinds of blends that ship all across the world. So in 2007, it was the 50th anniversary, or just about the 50th anniversary of the Tamnavulin distillery, and we relaunched as a single malt. And we went through what's called a re-racking process. So basically what this is you have this wonderful liquid that's sitting inside barrels, which are probably a little bit old, a little bit tired, probably don't give as much to the liquid as you'd like. So when you re-rack, you're literally putting it into fresh oak, and that just lifts it. It just suddenly brings it back to life again. Imagine something being dormant and a bit asleep. This just kind of shakes it awake and makes it start to bring out all the different flavors. We launched with the Tamnavulin double cask originally, and that was such a roaring success. And to be honest with you, I personally think that this whiskey has no business being this good for this price point. I think it's a phenomenal little drop. And I have a lot of friends, as you'd imagine, being in the booze trade. You have lots of friends, particularly around Christmas time. And this is one of these whiskies that I like to bring out for my friends who like a nice whiskey, but you don't necessarily want to sit down and pull it apart for a couple of hours or so and bring out all these tasting notes. You want a good whiskey to give you a nice time with your friends and just have a good experience. And this is what Tamnavulin does really well for us. And this one particularly, the French Cabernet Sauvignon. So obviously French Cabernet Sauvignon, this is a question that gets asked to me every now and again is, I'm not really a fan of red wine, but will I like this? And you don't necessarily need to like wine or red wine to enjoy this whiskey. It's all about the finesse. So what we do is we age first in ex-American oak, so that really lovely crisp butterscotch kind of vanilla notes you're getting from the grain whiskey, which by the way was amazing. That's a lovely little drop. It's a cheeky little number, that one. And then so then we finish off in red wine barrels. So we've got a little range on the go. We've got one for a German Pinot Noir, we've got a Grenache, we've got an American Cabernet, but the French Cabernet works particularly well because French Cabernet is always really chunky, very chewy, lots of plush red fruits. So you're going to get lots of damson, lots of berry, lots of that kind of red fruit crushed note coming through. But it pairs particularly well with what we're doing with Tamnavulin. So the classic Tamnavulin tasting note, because we have a relatively long fermentation time, it is quite floral. But for me, it's like orchard fruits. It's like apples, Bramley apples, and a bit of cinnamon. And that paired with just that extra layer of red fruit on top, going back in time, Scotch and sherry, best of friends, and that's what we've always done. But I think that there's a real way to start moving out from the sherry finished whiskies to see what else is available. And I know later on tonight, actually, we're trying a Calvados cask, which I'm quite looking forward to as well. Because I think that if as part of your journey into single malts, you'll start off with a bourbon barrel, and then maybe it goes to bourbon and sherry. And there's so many of them, hundreds of thousands. I mean, so Richard Patterson, the head whiskey maker at White and Mackay, we're known for Dalmore Jury and Fettica and that kind of thing. So big sherry bombs, that kind of thing. But it's nice to try something that's a little bit off the beaten path. It's a little bit different. It's got just a different kind of finish to it. And for me, especially with the French Cabernet, I think this is one of those big kind of like red fruit hits right in the nose. Phenomenal little thing.
Yeah, I mean, first thing that hits me obviously is the colour of it.
Yeah,
it's
phenomenal, right?
Phenomenal, kind of that rose hue to this. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's the first thing that hits me. I'm just going to read you a few of the tasting notes that are coming because there are quite a lot coming in, and I need to get
okay. Yeah, brilliant.
Head back to the start of this. There's loads coming in for this. Hold on one second. There's quite.
Sorry, I went on a bit of a ramble for a little while there.
Yeah, no, it's great. We love to hear from you. I prefer to hear from you than me. No one's here to hear me. Again, Anthony Mullin's beautiful colour. TACD, extremely rich, fruity nose on this. Anthony Mullin's so fruity on the nose. David Stanton, floral orchard, lime marmalade.
Yeah,
that's a great tasting note. Cinnamon spice.
Lime marmalade. Yeah, phenomenal. Great.
That's a great tasting note, David. Peter Gilmore, chocolate and toffee to the nose. Pandbear port on the nose. Interesting. Alex Antonio, poached pear nose, allspice and cacao on the palate. Steve Common Williams, ginger oat biscuits and undiluted pear cordial from behind the bar in the mid-2000s. That is an unbelievably specific tasting note.
Very niche. That's a real poll.
Absolutely love it. When you were working at a waitress in a cocktail bar, did you have undiluted pear cordial from behind the bar in the mid-2000s?
No, I think I was a level above the cocktail bar I was working at, I'll be honest with you. Mine was very much a student bar.
Mike Pizarro, apple and plum on the nose for me. Simon, fruity crumble with pear and plums. Your Uncle Vanya, Tamnavulin deserves more praise and attention, I feel. Cracking drams while very well priced. Yeah, absolutely.
That's great feedback. Yeah, I mean, I 100% I agree. So I think that we can sometimes get a bit lost in the weeds for what we need to drink, and sometimes it needs to be the big, beefy, chewy kind of single malts makes it a better whiskey. Not necessarily. Sometimes it's just nice to have just a whiskey that's presented really, really well, and that's where the real skill of a blender will come in, where you can pull out these casks, blend it together, and create this flavour which actually, no matter where you drink it, no matter who you're drinking it with, and no matter what time of day or evening, ideally evening, when you're drinking the whiskey, it should be, you know, the perfect accompaniment for the moment. I don't necessarily always want to come home and drink something that's, you know, really fighty and like 60% and blows your head off and needs water. Sometimes I've had a long day. I just would really like a lovely little dram to just relax with. And for me, Tamnavulin just ticks all those boxes. Now, 100% coming back to that, I do think it deserves way more praise than it gets. I think it's a great little drop.
I think it's one of those things that like the snobbish side of the whiskey culture, as soon as they see something bottled at 40% or is easier drinking or something, than, you know, the Springbanks of this world, the Ardbeys of the world, I don't know, they kind of assume it as something that is kind of inferior, but that's just not the case.
I mean, look, it's the way to look at it is, you know, when you go out for your wardrobe, sometimes you want to go out suited and booted, sometimes it's more comfortable to go out to wear flip-flops and shorts. Yeah. Both do the same job, it's just different occasions.
Different. It doesn't mean it's bad at all, and this
100%
is not 100%. Bad. This is
yeah, exactly. Like I say, it has no business being this good. And like I say, when I bring my friends around here, you know, I've been in the trade for quite a while, so I managed to accumulate a fair amount of kit, which I've got some of it behind me, trying to stay on brand, but I've got lots of stuff from all over the place. I love flavors and discovering flavors, so I have all sorts of bits and bobs. But actually, sometimes what's the best whiskey to bring out is just something that's just, it does the job and it's easy and it's really fun and you can talk about it and you can enjoy it. And actually, a lot of the people, when they try Tamnavulin, they expect it to be something way above its price point. And when you explain what it is and where it's from, and, you know, they love the story behind it. And like I say, it's not a pretty distillery. There's no two ways about it. We've got 2 warehouses holding about 35,000 casks on site, and it's all racked. But it was designed as a factory. It was designed to create, but particularly designed really good, consistent quality space-side malt to use for blending. But the thing is, one of these things where once we discovered that we had this liquid kind of hidden away effectively and then re-racked it, you go back and taste it and realize that, hang on a minute, this is actually really, really good. This deserves to be a malt in its own right. We've got some older Tamnavulin as well. So as I say, for literally 3 weeks or so, we were opened in 2000. So there's some of the 2000 available. We've also got some from 1979, 73, 1970, you know, just a few bits and bobs. And I think there's a few independent bottlings floating about as well from Gordon MacPhail. Not very much. But it's one of these distilleries it's kind of now it's becoming a worst kept secret, but for a long period of time, it's just, you know, chugged away in the background, done what it needs to do, done it well, done everything we've asked of it, but never had its time to shine. And I think it's nice now that we've got this collection, which we're expanding. You know, as I say, we've got more and more wine finishes coming through.
What does the future hold then? What is coming out? Is there anything we can look forward to?
Again, so it's all about the cask maturation. We've nailed the process of production. So, like I say, with the fermentation time now is ever so slightly longer. Mm-hmm. So the longer you ferment when you're making your whiskey, you get slightly more of a floral note. Less of that really chunky, chewy malt. It's more of that kind of really floral, fruity note coming through. Again, that orchard fruit comes through. I mean, that's classic Speyside for me. So in terms of the liquid coming off the stills, we kind of honed it to an absolute perfection. So one of the things we did in 2007 when we reopened was actually we automated a lot of the processes, and that was purely and simply to make sure that we're getting the most consistent products off the still every single time. So the next steps for us, I think, is going to be more into this cask exploration series. So what we call finessing. So you have your first maturation inside your ex-American oak or ex-bourbon or that virgin oak barrel. I think we've gone through the wine series now, and as you know from some of our other distilleries we have in our portfolio, we like to experiment with different sweet wine finishes and some port finishes and that sort of thing. So I think there's scope for us now to start moving into. We set the bar now really, really high for ourselves with good quality wine finishes. What can we do with other unique barrels that are coming across the world? And I don't think we're necessarily unique in that. I mean, you look through the kind of trend you see in single malts these days, particularly it's all. And what I love about it is it has gone back to that point of, does it taste good? And that is as simple as it needs to be. Do you like it? Does it taste good? Perfect. So there's kind of the shackles have been taken off from doing, like I say, like classic Scotch and sherry. Now we're moving into, what about Scotch and a pale ale? What about Scotch and a stout? What about Scotch and a mezcal? What about Scotch and a Calvados? You know, there's so much that we can do. There's so much out there that we haven't really tapped into the potential of yet. That I think that's. And I think if we can bring this now to people to just into their homes to enjoy and realize that actually a whiskey can be whatever you want. I mean, one of the other things we're also doing with Tamnavulin is encouraging people to actually drink it as a long drink.
Okay.
You know, whiskey, 100%. You know, whiskey, I personally, I will drink it neat. I don't necessarily like it over ice. I quite like a drop of water every now and again. But, and again, going back to my times as my waitress in the cocktail bar, I remember the first time I was moving onto the bar and somebody ordered a whiskey and apple juice. It was actually a Jameson's and a cloudy apple juice. And I looked at them like they had four heads. I couldn't quite get my head around it. I was just blown away by this order. And they could quite clearly tell that I was doing this. I said, no, you don't believe me. Okay, I'll buy you one. So, okay, fine, fair enough. And I tried it and I was like, oh, this is incredible. This is a revelation. You know, it doesn't have to always be that classic single malt sat in a leather wingback chair. Just enjoy it how you like it, you know?
I think the more people get into whiskey that's happened recently in the boom, the more people want to know about it. And I feel like people are just exploring. The more there's information, there's more brands doing interesting things with cask finishing. The more people get fascinated by it and they just want to keep trying innovation and want to try new
100%.
things.
And that can only be a good thing.
Absolutely. I'm just going to read out a few more of these tasting notes because I'm conscious of time, unfortunately.
Yeah, sure.
Your Uncle Vanya, David Stanton, nectarines, damson, plums, gingerbread, red berries and banana bread. Love the colour. Ian Jamborane, very interesting note. No, struggling to pick things out, but certainly fruity and spicy. Pat Cowling, it's like an old-fashioned sweet shop. Rhubarb and custard, pear drops and herbal mints. Yeah, absolutely. Jim Glancy, this is a great spicy note and the smoothest taste. Does not have to be challenging to be lovely. The colour is very beguiling too. Lovely word. Real Boinger, orange, spicy gingerbread with dried fruit on the nose. Anthony Mullins, a second glass empty. So easy drinking drams so far. Absolutely. Peter Gilmore, taste-wise, I get red wine, but cinnamon too. Your Uncle Vanya, quickly, one last question. Do Tamnavulin do cask strength drams? This one would be interesting.
We haven't done yet. That could be something that we could explore in the future. We haven't done yet purely and simply because this is a huge brand. It kind of caught us by surprise, to be completely honest with you. And it's gone global. We're all over the place now with Tamnavulin for good reason. It's a really good quality malt. And obviously, when you're producing a cask strength whiskey, you'll reduce the amount you can physically sell, and then that becomes then a slightly more expensive whiskey. And I think that in terms of plans, maybe in the next 3, 4, 5 years or so, that would be something that we'd look to do. But I think what we need to do now is make sure we get just land it right with Tamnavulin currently, and make sure that people understand that this is a whiskey for everybody to enjoy, no matter what. I think we've done that really, really well. But yeah, 100%. I mean, like I say, we released last year was when we released those older vintages of the Tamnavulin, and it again caught us by surprise. It just absolutely flew out the door. Phenomenal stuff. So I think this is something that we could look into in the future, 100%.
Well, thank you for that answer. I'd be interested to try it. Craig Ellis, my dad bought me a gift of this a while ago. I haven't opened it yet, but after trying this, I'll get it open for Christmas. Gorgeous.
Brilliant.
Mike Pizarro, I agree with this punching above its price point. I'm generally not fussed by any of the red wine finishes, not a big fan of sherry either, but this one is very enjoyable. Ali C, kids were late to bed, so tuned in a bit late. What was the quiz question? You didn't miss anything, Ali. It is coming up. Ali C, this is incredibly easy drinking, great flavours from the red wine cask. Erin, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And if you could stick around for the end, that would be great.
Yeah, 100%. I'll be here. I'll be here in the background drinking away. Don't you worry.
All right. We'll see you in a bit. Cheers. Right, so this is going really quickly, and I'm having a wonderful time. I'm going to bring Jess back, my fabulous co-host. How's it going?
Hello. It's good. I feel like we couldn't have two more opposite drams to start off with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the great thing about Four and Sip. That is the great thing about Four and Sip. Right, so next in line for...
Yes, I will be sitting on Glen Moray with Emma.
Yes, so I'm going to welcome Emma to the screen.
Hello.
Hello.
How are we getting on?
Fine.
How are you?
I'm good. I feel like this is the start of a pretty phenomenal lineup. I feel a little bit overwhelmed, although I'm going to join in with my very own Christmas socks.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh, those look huge. They got like 2 knees.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, they're Christmas stockings, but the running joke online at the moment has been they make great bit socks.
I love that. I need that right now. Yeah, I apologize for my complete lack of... I don't own a single bit of festive clothing. So yes, the fluffiest jumper I could find has made an appearance.
All good. We've got the Christmas spirit. That's all we need.
Exactly. And Christmas drams. So yeah, before we get on to the whiskey, where are you chatting to us from today?
So I'm just at home in Elgin. So I just live 5 minutes away from the distillery.
Oh, ideal. And well, I mean, tell us about your job, because I feel like if you lived any further from the distillery, then that wouldn't be super ideal.
Yeah, it used to be good. When life was slightly less busy, I could meander over to the distillery. These days, life is slightly more hectic. I joined Glen Moray back in 2009. So 13 and a half years ago, which feels like an absolute lifetime. But
yeah, that's a good stint.
Yeah, no, I always make the joke that I started there. I started as a tour guide and just never left.
Oh, wow. Well, you know your way around then.
Yeah, so I joined the visitor centre at a much kind of quieter time. So Glen Moray had just been taken over. We were sold on and we were snapped up by La Martiniquez, our parent company. And it was great. I joined about 6 months after the takeover. So I have got to see everything that has changed over the last decade and a bit. And it's been phenomenal, really.
Yeah, because well, so today we've got the 15-year-old, and its sort of nickname, if you like, is Elgin Heritage. So what is the Elgin Heritage?
So we have grown so much over the last 10 years plus that when I joined the company, we had 3 core range whiskies. And we've just sort of boomed from there. So we ended up splitting them into different ranges. So we have the Elgin Classic range at the moment, which is a sort of very young experimental series, different cask finishes, which are really good for introducing people to sort of different styles, giving them a chance to maybe try something at a really accessible price point that they haven't come across before. And then we've got the Heritage range, which is much more focused on our sort of classic traditional Speyside styles. So we've got that little bit of everything. It's really interesting, actually, for Glen Moray to be following Tamnavulin. We're a good bit older, but we followed kind of quite similar trajectories. We've just taken a bit longer to do it. So we're officially 125 years old as of this year.
A belated happy birthday. We're a few months late, but I think
we're looking good.
When it's 125 years, a few months doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, we kind of use the excuse. It's a bit like myself. I always like a birthday to last a little bit longer than just one day. So we just kind of made a whole year of it, which was fantastic.
Oh, for sure. Were there big celebrations at the distillery?
We were supposed to have some very big celebrations, which were at a rather untimely time for the national period, but we managed to squeeze in lots of little things over the year, and I think that's what's kind of made it a little bit more fun because we've extended it even more than what we planned. We like an excuse for a celebration.
Amazing. I'm just going to have a little nose of this. So could you talk us through sort of the cask recipe for this one and like how that affects the end taste and smell?
Yeah, the 15-year-old is going back to real kind of traditional style for Glen Moray. So a huge amount of what we do is fully matured in bourbon casks. We did produce previously a 16-year-old, which was very popular. They were a mixture of bourbon and sherry. But what we wanted to do was split the range, and we wanted to produce a 15 and an 18 instead. And the 15 was the one that we chose to retain that more traditional style with. So we're still looking at part bourbon, part sherry maturation. But instead of doing the finishing that you'll find on the classic range, what we've done is the full term maturation in both styles with a marriage at the end.
Oh, amazing. Okay, so it's like, full steam ahead on both rather than...
Yeah, so you're getting the full benefit of both styles all at once.
50-50 of each?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So when we moved into the 15-year-old, we increased the sherried content on it. What we have is actually a lot softer than maybe what some people expect. This is definitely not one of these big sherry bombs, although it's 50% at 15 years old. It's not going to just be all about the sherry. It's got that really nice balance between a much more traditional Glenmorangie style. So all of that sort of typical sweet, fruity vanillas and caramels. She says, getting thirsty talking about it.
I mean, it's not that.
It would be good not to.
It's like got that wonderful balance of spices and custardy notes, and we're getting some great tasting notes through here as well. There's lots of mentions of apple on the nose from Mike Pizarro, David Stanton, orchard fruits, garden syrup, toffee fudge, strawberry jam, like all of these wonderful flavors. We've got Steve Coleman Williams, reminds me of fresh cooked Genoa cake. I'm not familiar with Genoa cake.
That's quite specific, yeah, some type of fruitcake style. That's quite nice because it's not that sort of traditional heavy fruitcake style. I don't think it's much more about the lightness with
it's
it.
sort of not sticky. It's just sort of light and sweet.
Yeah, I think that works really well. The orchard fruit things, definitely apples and pears. When you walk around a distillery, depending on which way the wind's blowing, you'll get different flavors coming in because the distillery is a sort of horseshoe shape at the front, and then we've extended out the back. So some of these smells sort of waft over from the back buildings into the courtyard and get trapped. Good on some days, not so good on other days. But you're starting to get some of the fermentation characters coming over. Apples and pears are quite common. Bananas is another one. We get a lot of banana flavors coming through on some of these more traditional Glenmorangie styles.
Yeah. You sort of mentioned the house style there, but is that sort of, I mean, what is the house style? You mentioned sort of like fresh fruits, and where does that come from? Is it the fermentation?
Well, we've got really short fermentation times compared to a lot of other places. We're averaging about 56 hours in fermentation just now. So that keeps that really light, fruity flavor, lots of ester characteristics. As I say, that the apples, the pears, the bananas. But then we've got our stills. Very accurate representation on my stocking here. Sort of
handy more than once.
So really classic pot still shapes, but they aren't sort of, you'll see these stills that have these sort of exaggerated characteristics, and that helps to pull through lots of really strong different flavors or build up layers of flavor. These sort of classic simple pot shaped stills help bring out the cleanness in that fruit. And I think that's what really helps it shine through the spirit. They're not particularly tall stills. The runoff on the line arm is quite shallow. That kind of brings the spirit over softly. That's what gives Glenmorangie a really nice texture. Even our new make spirit's got this kind of creaminess to it, and it just balances those fruitier notes.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for that creamy texture and a little bit of weight to the spirit, that's when they start to get it's maybe almost sort of, I don't mean it in a derogatory term, but sort of I always think of as like really airy-fairy spirits. They're very light, they're very delicate almost.
Yeah.
We've got a little bit more punch in there, and that really helps see that spirit character right through into the aged products.
Yeah, I can imagine that, bourbon cask will just bring that creaminess out even more. And then sherry cask, this is a prime example, obviously, that it's just going to add to that, like the spices and the fruits, the creaminess, without sort of becoming, like claggy or sticky or anything like that, which
absolutely. Especially as you start to get into the olders. So when you get to sort of 15 years old, 18 years old, we do a 21-year-old, they don't ever taste aged. in that sort of overly woody characteristic. There's a freshness to Glenmoray Spirit that will always shine through. And I love that. I love that we get some really old whiskies and they taste like Glenmoray. They don't
Yeah,
just taste
exactly.
like
It's the DNA that's just there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many more tasting notes as well. I've just got to tell you some of these. We've got Peter Gilmore, Scottish tablet with sweetness and peppery tastes. Simon, again, got the oily texture. It sort of coats your mouth. Alice, again, the tablet note from the tasting card is bang on. This is buttery, vanilla, and then a bit of spiced apple crumble and custard. Exactly. I was thinking fruit crumble and custard is exactly what I got with this. It's amazing.
You can't go wrong with fruit crumble. This makes perfect winter whiskey.
Yeah, exactly.
It's quite interesting picking up on the oiliness as well, in the tasting notes, because it is a 40%er. So it's one of the lighter ones that we do. It's normally, you always think of 40% is kind of here and gone, but it does have a little bit of longevity to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I wonder what people would guess as well if you gave them to this and didn't tell them the percentage, because, as we were talking about, some people get a bit sniffy about it, but actually it's just a lovely dram.
I think this is one of those ones that can really kind of hold its own. It doesn't automatically make you start questioning how old is it, how strong is it. It's like you were saying with some of the other drams, it's just a pleasant drinking whiskey.
Yeah, which is all we really want here.
It's all we want in life.
It's not too much for us to take for, clearly. Is there any way, like, would you mix this at all? How would you sort of have this in a cocktail?
The 15 makes a really good whiskey sour if you like your sort of real traditional whiskey cocktails. Yeah. I think it's a really fantastic one for pairing. So if you're into sort of food and whiskey pairings, this is a great dinner dram.
Yes, all about food and whiskey pairings here. Anytime.
Yeah. I'm a bit of a sucker for a sort of chocolate and whiskey pairing, I have to say. But that's just an excuse to eat chocolate.
There's not many occasions where that wouldn't be delicious.
But it's got enough flavor and character that you're going to get something from it. I don't know about yourself, but when I do sort of food and whiskey pairings, I always look for contrast rather than just the sort of complementary flavors. Yeah. And I think you can highlight a lot of the background characters in the 15 by sort of adding in different things, particularly sort of fats and spices will both have really different effects on this one.
Okay, what's your go-to dish for this one? We need specifics.
It's funny, normally you would go for sort of pork cask styles for cheeses and things, but actually something a little bit sort of cheesy, when it's got that fat content to it, it can produce a really interesting texture with it. Things, even just simple things, sort of black cracked pepper crackers and things can be really interesting.
On the savory route. Okay, I love that. Also, we can find those things easily, so that's always a good food pairing to get.
I'm not one of these. It's never going to be an overly complicated recipe for me. It's going to be something out your cupboards.
Okay, well, thank God.
But dark chocolate, if you like a sweeter style, this is absolutely perfect with dark chocolate as well. It's that sherry note to it.
It's funny as well. So we've got Pat Cowling saying that he gets apple sours on the finish. So looking right back to the whiskey sours, getting all of that. Steve Colin Williams gets fruit salad, but a dried fruit salad with custard and a sprinkling of cinnamon. Again, custard keeps coming up. And David Stanton's got strawberries, cinnamon, gooseberry, and ground ginger on the finish as well. It's just the finish. So
just the finish. That's
amazing.
I like the custard one. Yeah, I think custard
I get a lot of custard.
Sums up everything, particularly what we're saying about the texture as well. It pairs in perfectly.
Yeah, I think that's half of it as well. I think that's why it's so evocative of that custardy, like Scottish tablet and all that kind of delicious.
Poached pears and custard. I feel like that needs to be dinner now.
Yeah, I mean, Simon's literally just said, I'm getting hungry now. So, but I'm just conscious of time. This has been absolutely lovely. Thank you so much for your time. If you can hang around until the end.
Yeah, I'm happy to sit here and listen. It's always great to hear from other people as well. So I'm sitting learning along with everybody else.
backstage just chilling. So that is lovely. Andy is back.
Hello. That was a lovely dram. Lovely stuff.
I've got some left.
Really
so
enjoyed that.
in a second.
Really great chat. So thank you for joining us, Emma. And if you can stick around, please do. If you can't, enjoy your night, enjoy your Christmas, and we will see you shortly. Cheers. Bye, guys. Well, this is going really quickly.
I know. My goodness. My first 20 minutes, and it's felt like 2 seconds.
How pour and sip works. The whiskey helps.
Screen. I've only got 2. Exactly. So looking at my notes, we are moving on to Mossburn.
Indeed. Yes. So it's time for me to say goodbye until we get to Deanston. So I'll be sitting backstage.
Okay, so everybody say goodbye to Jess, who will be back with us. That is my phone. I'm declining that now. Goodbye.
Bye.
And please welcome Stuart. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. I am not too bad. Thank you for sticking around so far. This is our Christmas extravaganzas go on a bit longer than usual, so thank you very much for sticking around. Whereabouts are we talking to you from?
So I'm in Edinburgh tonight. I live in Speyside, but I'm in Edinburgh doing some sampling and stuff. So I'm heading north tomorrow. So I'm here from a flat in Edinburgh.
Is this an Airbnb or just someone's flat?
Yeah, no Airbnb. No, I didn't just break into it, although that would be cheaper. That'd be better than the expenses. That's probably frowned upon though, to be fair. Yeah, no Airbnb. So yeah. I kind of make set up here very much. But yeah, it's working all right. Managed to position the telly nicely, so I was pretty chuffed with that.
Okay. So talk to us a little bit about yourself and how you got into your role, Mossburn.
Yeah, so I've been sort of working in the whiskey industry for three and a half years. I've got a super varied CV. Started out in hospitality. After I left uni, I ran a small hotel, went into retail, had a card shop, post office, done all sorts of really random stuff. So yeah, my CV's all over the shop. But the thing that kind of led me to whiskey was getting back into hospitality, which was getting back behind a bar, which had a really great whiskey selection. So that kind of led me to learn more about whiskey, and from there I just became kind of really obsessed, I suppose, really interested. I worked at Tamnavulin in the visitor centre for 3 years, and I've been with Mossburn for since July, so 5 and a bit months.
Okay, cool. So it's kind of still a new venture.
Yeah, this is pretty new job. So yeah, it's still kind of bedding in, not 6 months in. Okay. It's been a busy 5 months. Okay. It's been really good. So yeah, really enjoying it.
That's great. So talk to us a bit firstly about Mossburn and what you guys are, the Mossburn range, and what's so unique about what you guys do.
Yeah, so we're bottlers, blenders, and we own Torvig Distillery on Skye. So we do quite a bit of indie bottling. We release half a dozen or so indie bottlings a year. A lot of them we do some interesting finishing on. So last year we had several were out. One of which was an Athrust in Bordeaux barrels, which is one of my favorite whiskies that I've had recently. Okay. We do some blended malts as well. So we have a couple of blended malt brands. So under the Mossburn brand, we release two whiskies which are our signature blends. We've got a Speyside and an Island, and those we finish in hybrid casks. So Speyside we use sherry butts with heavily charred American oak ends, and for the Island we use bourbon barrels with heavily toasted European oak ends.
Interesting.
So those give some really interesting drams, really nice daily drinkers, really, and that's very much how we sell daily drinkers. So those are some really great drams. We do a lot of our whiskey maker describes it as buggering about with whiskey. So we do a lot of, I love that quote. It's my favorite thing. I was with them at the whiskey show down in London, and that's how he described it. And yeah, I was like, I'm using that. I am definitely using that. So yeah, we do a lot of stuff like that. We do a lot of kind of nerdy experimental stuff. Our distillery we have a small distillery in Galashiels, an experimental grain distillery. So we've got a single pot column there. We've made some rye, we've made some Genever, and our distillery manager there runs our wood program. So he gets to do a lot of interesting stuff. We have another blended malt brand that we produce called Castle Hamish, or Castle Camus in English. Most people will stick with the English because the Gaelic is a little bit challenging. I think it took me about 2 months to get comfortable actually saying it in the Gaelic version. So that's heavily peated island blended malt. The non-age statement's finished in bourbon, 12-year-old finished in sherry, and we've got a sherry butt Solera that we use for that as well. So lots of really interesting cask stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, it's all going on, really.
Yes.
It's such a kind of, like, literally a mad array of things going on here, which I think makes you kind of stand out in a way that I've not really heard before. So
yeah,
that is.
And I didn't even really talk about Torvaig there.
Oh, this was my next question. Is it just a little brief bit? So how's that come about?
Yeah, so Torvaig, we've been in production since 2017. We bought the site in 2014 and then spent 3 years renovating it, turning it into a distillery. It's an old farmsteading that was very dilapidated. I mean, it wasn't quite falling down, but it was really dilapidated. So it took a lot of work, a lot of time to actually get that up to standard. And listed building as well. So obviously that had all sorts of other implications with what we could do and what we could change. So we're using heavily peated barley. We run long fermentations. We run our stills really slow. We cut very, very high. So we only have a 15-minute foreshot. And that's all about, developing these kind of really well integrated peaty notes.
So that's really cool. That's a distillery that's been creating a lot of interest. But moving on to what we're going to be drinking tonight, this is piquing my interest quite dramatically. Yeah. So talk to us a bit about this particular drink that we are drinking tonight.
Yeah, so really interesting dram. I mean, this is not something. So obviously, this is something that we bottled exclusively for you guys for Drinks by the Dram. So with something like this, we're not spending a huge amount of time with this liquid, but yeah, really, really nice, really great dram finished in Madeira. Now, so our whiskey maker Neil, last time I bumped into him was on Skye at Torvaig, and he was just sitting down to look at what our next kind of parcel of incoming casks were going to be, and trying and pairing them up with the liquid that we have. So he spends a lot of time figuring out what liquid is going to work well with different casks. So obviously I mentioned that cask earlier on in the Bordeaux barrels. So that's one where they wanted sweetness but not, sorry, they wanted to add fruitiness but not sweetness. So yeah, with this, this was one that they decided was going to work really well with these Madeira hoggies, just to give something really interesting. I think it's a great dram.
Yeah, I mean, off the bat, it smells absolutely incredible. Loads and loads of honey and just sweet stuff. Talk to us a little bit. Is it Mannochmore? Because I mean, a lot of us.
Yeah, Mannochmore. Mannochmore is how I'd pronounce it.
That's very important.
Yeah, so I live up that night. I live in Speyside. I live just outside Granton and Spey. So this is one of these distilleries that's actually going to be pretty hard to get to. Unlike an awful lot of them, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And Aaron earlier was talking about Tamnavulin being one of the youngest. And yeah, the Mannochmore is a bit younger. Mannochmore was the 70s. One of the many distilleries founded in the 70s and then mothballed not long after. Again, another lovely industrial site, one of these big, beautiful 70s buildings. So picturesque, it ain't.
It ain't. So, but was it set up in a similar way to Tamnavulin originally for blending, or was it set up for single malt, or was it, what's the kind of the house style that we should be expecting from a Mannochmore?
I mean, my understanding of Mannochmore is that it would have been. It's likely that it would have been for blending, So built in the 70s, would have been very much to supply malt for that boom that was going on in the 70s. So yeah, that's very much what it would have been built for. It would have been single malt. I mean, for blending. Sorry, really limited releases of single malt. You've got the Flora and Fauna version, and then you've got Loch Dhu, which is Mannochmore under a slightly different label. Super dark whiskey. Just basically black. So Loch Dhu is Black Loch, in Gaelic. So yeah, really limited single malt release. So getting it on indies is always interesting to see what other people are doing with it.
That's great to hear. I'm just going to read out a few tasting notes. Firstly, your Uncle Vanya saying, "Hey, that's where I know you from. The Tamnavulin Visitor Centre was killing me not remember. We've drammed before." So there you go.
I somehow thought I recognised the name Uncle Vanya.
Well, there you go. See, it's bringing it all back. Someone's going to recognise you from your post office as well. Saying that the honey is really heavy on the nose, which it absolutely is. Steve Common Williams, honey and salty kale on the nose. Hint of orange after it's sat for a while. That's an interesting tasting note, salty kale. Johnny T816 saying all legal buggering about, I hope. Alex Antonio, in the nicest way, it's like a salty hot toddy with a faint lemsip nose. If you like lemsip, then that is a good thing. Real Boinga, I get wild berries with lemon juice. Anthony Mullins, I'm getting custard tart on the nose. David Stanton, the palate's milk, coffee, honey, vanilla, fresh wood. Mike Pizarro, oh, that's a good dram. Sweet apricot honey, real punch to it. Milk chocolate, vanilla custard. This is by far my favourite tonight. Steve Common Williams, super spicy lemon honey with a smoothing almond lingering left in the mouth long enough. David Stanton, dry hazelnut crisp, vanilla and some wood. Jim Glancy is just quickly asking, does Loch Dhu still exist? It's impossible to say that without sounding Scottish. It was properly black. Does it still exist?
Yeah, I mean, I just did a quick Google of it.
I think we are slightly losing you, Stuart. If you probably, maybe the Google is overwhelming the Wi-Fi at the same time.
I'm guessing that. You got me back now?
You could ask another time if Loch Dhu still exists. I really enjoying this at the moment. There's this wonderful spicier element to it. There's this lovely honey kind of note to it, but it's got real body to it for me. That's the first thing. And it's like super, super body. And it is bottled at 53.5%. I haven't added water to this one yet. Is that something you think would improve the flavors of this one, would open it up a little bit more?
So yeah, I mean, I put a couple of drops of water into it. And yeah, really opened it up, gave it a lot more sort of caramel notes, took down that fieriness. I found it very slightly fiery. So adding water, yeah, really opened it up for me. Bit of caramel, bit of white pepper, really nice.
The mouthfeel is so wonderfully full-bodied and creamy. It just coats that palate. It's really, really wonderful dram. And I have to say, there's only 305 bottles, I think, of this. So this is one that if you do like it, you'll probably want to get your hands on it from the Pour and Sip store at some point.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I wrote down about this was thick mouthfeel. That was the first note that I put. It's just immediately, it's massive, completely coating. It's incredible.
Yeah, 100%. It's one of those things we miss with tasting notes when we very don't often as much talk about the mouthfeel, but when one comes along like this that really does have that wonderfully coating mouthfeel, it's really kind of obvious as well when you first put it into your mouth and you let it sit there. It's just wonderful. And then that finish has got that spicy element to it that is still lingering around on the tip of my tongue. So absolutely lovely stuff. What kinds of notes, though, should we expect from the Madeira cask to impart onto this particular dram?
Typically, for me, Madeira influence is not a million miles away from sherry influence. It kind of toned down a little bit more of that kind of rancio, and a little bit winey. So that was one of my tasting notes on the nose that I put down, was I'm getting a little bit of a wine note on the nose. I also get a kind of a hint of lavender on there as well.
Interesting.
So yeah, I think that's the interesting thing with the difference between these different wine finishes. So you get really quite similar wines that have just a subtle difference.
How long has this been finished for in the Madeira cask?
Don't know.
Because it doesn't taste to me like it's been an overpowering. It's like a really nice finish for me. That's probably, I'm not sure myself, I wouldn't speculate, but it's lovely and complex without overpowering at all what I consider to be that house characteristic, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have said it was a particularly long finish, because as you say, it's not. You've still got that house style, and that's very much what we tend to do. We like to try and let that house character show through. We're not looking to kind of overwhelm that and put something and just build something else on top of it. It's all about adding to it. It's not about overwhelming. So most of all of our vintage casks we're looking to display that distillery character. So where we have finished it is not a super long finish. We're not using super active casks. Yeah. It's all about letting the whiskey speak for itself. I mean, we describe ourselves as whiskey makers for whiskey people. So it's all about the liquid. It's all about letting that liquid shine through. And that's the case with all of the whiskies that we produce. So, including our blended malts, it's about letting them speak for themselves and not overwhelming it with cask finishing.
Yeah, it's easy to do that for a kind of for that interest of, oh, wow, this tastes, and this is wonderful because it's clearly added to this. It's made it really lovely and complex, and you can taste those Madeira notes in it, but it has definitely not overwhelmed this dram for what I imagine that house style is. Just a couple more tasting notes. Simon, this is a must buy for me. Love it. Jim Glancy saying Loch was properly dangerous, nearly killed my brother-in-law with it. Okay, so highly recommended. Panda Bear, Missy's not so keen on this, but the flavour going on, I'm quite keen on it. Definitely orangey. David Stanton, dry hazelnut crisp, vanilla and some wood and spice. Anthony Mullins, I put a couple of drops of water in this and opened up the honey taste for me. Johnny 816 is just asking quickly back onto Torre is how peaty is the Torre you mentioned, Stuart?
Torre we use heavily peated barley, so 77 ppm in grain phenols, but residual phenols of just 17 ppm, which we consider to be a much more important and relevant number. But if you come and talk to me at a whiskey show, I can get even more specific and break it down for you in terms of the rate of different phenols. So I won't go into that tonight. But yeah,
well, we'll have to get you on with some Torre and then we can go well into it.
Yeah, that would be great. It would be brilliant to get Torre onto one of these and we can have a proper chat about it.
That sounds amazing. I have tried the original release and it was wonderful stuff. Mike Pizarro, done. I was thinking I would get last month's Teanic, but now I want this. And I think at this point, I'm going to have to buy both and then eat dust for Christmas. Okay. Anthony was just having the same thought about this a couple of months ago. And then I'm being told for a quick time check. So thank you very much, Stuart, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I love that dram. I think it's absolutely amazing. So thank you very much. And if you could stick around to the end, please do. If you can't, have a Merry Christmas. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thanks for having me along.
Great. So I'm just going to invite Jess back on screen. Did you get a try of that one?
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah. I was super intrigued about that one as well. I love to dabble in a cask finish.
Yeah, no, same here. But I love that. There's such body to that dram. It's one.
Yeah.
It's really
well, we're rounding off the tasting with two pretty cool cask finishes, actually, and two pretty strong whiskies.
I was about to say, so at this point, I know we're 4 drams down. I haven't finished all of my whiskies. I'm going to be saving some drops for later. Because we are now moving from, I think that was 53.5%, and now we're moving to 57.4%. Mm-hmm. So, well, guys, it's up to you guys. So I'm going to invite Luke onto the screen, who's been patiently waiting.
Yes, it's finally your time. Last but not least.
Last but not least. How's it going?
Really well, thanks. Yeah, honestly, I've just been sat here and enjoying the show and then forgetting that I actually have to come on and talk. So I do have my drams here, but I haven't finished them all yet. I'm sure some of you have. But at the same time, I realize I do have to talk.
You do. And so enjoy. I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of Jess, and I will see you guys afterwards. So cheers.
Andy.
Oh, sorry. Taking Luke off. This is why Christy's in charge of the controls. Bye.
He could have played that off as like some joke or something, but
he could have. Luke doesn't need to talk, so he's just gonna just talk to himself.
And that's all from Luke. How are you today?
I'm very well, thanks. Yeah. So it's been snowing here in Edinburgh today,
yes.
which is absolutely grand. But at the same time, we don't want too much of it. So
just like a delicate festive sprinkling.
Festive sprinkling. That's probably the way to put it right enough. Aye.
Gosh, I'll stop complaining about how cold it is in London then.
Positively tropical, I'm sure. Down in London.
Great. So thrilled to have you on here. Deanston, I love all whiskies equally, but Deanston does have a very little special place in my heart. So really excited to talk about that. But first, I would love to know what you do with Deanston and how did you get into the whiskey world?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's interesting that we've chosen the Deanston Calvados cask this evening because my background is actually cider. Obviously, apple very closely related. I'm very familiar with Calvados because of that. And it was a Scottish cider company, and people don't associate Scotland with cider at all. But Scotland produces a lot of apples, much like the rest of the country, and we decided to make some of it into cider and do that sort of process. And then I started off at Thistle Cross Cider, which was Scotland's first cider company, and I did that straight out of university, and that was almost 10 years ago now. Then I moved into gin during that gin boom. Again, a small business up in the Highlands, just outside Aviemore, producing lovely little gins. And then for the past year and a half, I've been with Distell, the parent company of Deanston, which is fantastic. Like I've always worked in small business, and going to Distell, I thought, I'm going to this bigger business, but not really, because Distell is it may sound like a big company, but we just run 3 distilleries, unlike some of the larger companies that maybe run 40 or something like that. So yeah, it's been an interesting journny in the drinks industry, but I don't think I would ever leave it. I'm not sure you would either, Jess. No,
I do not know what I would do with all this information for one, and also it's just so much fun. Like, what are we doing right now?
Exactly. And you were talking about at the start of this wee live feed was there's quite a few of us here tonight that wouldn't necessarily come on stage and do the sort of tastings and things like that. I'm here tonight as the third choice, but at the same time, no. The way I see it is that actually we're getting to see the people that do the hard work behind the scenes, actually presenting Pour and Sip, and we know just as much, if not more, about the spirits that we're tasting this evening than the people that aren't here. And the reason why quite a lot of them aren't here is it's the Scotch Whisky Magazine Awards tonight here in Edinburgh. So my master distiller and my master blender are both schmoozing, shall we say. So, but you're getting you're getting the behind the scenes guys that know a little bit more, is what I was going to say tonight.
We'll see if you stand by your words in the morning when you're face to face with them both.
Very true.
We have had both of them on Pour and Sip before, so it's great to have a new face, 2 new faces.
Absolutely, and I am colleagues with them, and they have trained me vehemently in Deanston. I listen to every single word they say, and it is out of the 3 distilleries that Distell looks after, this Deanston is my favourite. So I'm actually honoured to be here and talk about it.
Amazing. Well, I can't wait to get stuck into it. So, I mean, I feel like we've had a couple of distilleries that, aren't the prettiest perhaps, but Deanston is actually a very lovely location. It's got a great history behind it.
Yeah, I mean, Deanston for 180 years was a cotton mill. And then when cotton didn't become the thing anymore, the fashion, so to speak, in 1966, they converted it into a distillery. And to be honest, it's in the perfect location for a distillery. It's right in the River Teith there, just north of Stirling. And forever, that distillery has been powered by a watermill. So the building itself, even though it was a cotton mill, was powered by the watermill, and now it powers the distillery. We're big on sustainability at Deanston. And we thought, oh well, we don't really need the cotton mill sort of machinery behind the scenes anymore to power the mill, etc. We could use the water, however, to power everything else. So Deanston now has a very modern sort of power generation situation going on there, where it uses the water from the river that we also use for the condensers to power the distillery with a hydroelectric generator. Only 14% of which we use. The rest we return to the grid and put something back into the energy grid for a change, which is lovely. And we're working as hard as we can to make Deanston sustainable. And the only thing that's left to go is the gas. And the more we can do with the electric, the less we need the gas. And that's the big thing that all Scottish distilleries are being asked to do by 2030. But we think we'll get there before some. So it's a lovely
head start.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's the lowest Highland distillery, if that makes sense. So like the border of the Highlands starts, and then you have Deanston. So if you've not been to Deanston Distillery, it's in a beautiful place, as you said, Jess. And it's a very open and honest distillery. It's one of the few distilleries in Scotland that has an open top mash tun with an old-fashioned mixing arm that goes around, all in gears. You can see everything. There's no secrets at Deanston. You see it all.
Oh, that's so cool. So can you talk us a bit through the production processes? Because Deanston, it's kind of known for having this waxiness and the new make, which carries through to all of the aged whiskey, of course. But where does that come from?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's only 2 distilleries in Scotland that produce a spirit characteristic known as waxy. And waxy spirit is highly desirable. And the reason why it's highly desirable is when you come to blended Scotch, which is, almost 90% of the Scotch whiskey industry, you have to be able to add some body to that grain whiskey. And, the 30-year-old grain whiskey we tasted at the start this evening was absolutely fantastic. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with grain whiskey. But when you're trying to make a blended Scotch, a mixture of malt and grain from various distilleries, you want a little bit of body to it. And waxiness is exactly what it says in the tin. When you run a waxy whiskey around the inside of your mouth, and you're going to do that with the Calvados very shortly, it sticks there like a beeswax, and it just sits there for a long time, and it coats the inside of your mouth. And only 2 distilleries are capable of doing such a thing in Scotland. Now, the way to make waxy spirit is a little bit of science and a little bit of what I would call witchcraft. Because you'll know that distilleries have new distillery managers every few years, and new master distillers and new blenders all the time. And quite often with distilleries, you walk in and say, "Don't touch that lever. We don't know what it does, but it definitely does something important. Just leave it as it is," sort of thing. But the sort of main factors around waxy spirit are super clear worts. So you've got a big malt filter when you're doing the mashing in, and that liquid that comes out before it goes into the washbacks for fermentation is really clear, and it's really tropical in terms of the notes that come off it. You're talking about mangoes and pineapples and bananas, all those sorts of tropical fruits that you get off there produces the start point of that waxy spirit. And then when we go into fermentation, in the washbacks at Deanston, you're producing a wash beer that is just, again, that really tropical fruity notes that come off it. And it is if you ever had a taste of wash beer, don't taste it too often, but you do have a wee taste of it. You do get what I'm saying about the sort of like a tropical fruit smoothie almost is how I would describe it. And it's not unpleasant. It's a really sweet, really interesting liquid. And then when we go to the distillation process, it's a huge part of it. Deanston whilst it's quite a young distillery in terms of when you talk about Scotch whisky distilleries, it's 1966. We have these massive stills, 2 massive wash stills, and again, 2 massive spirit stills. And the faints charger is a really unique piece of kit at Deanston, because quite often the low wines that come off the wash stills go into one container at distilleries. And then when it goes into the spirit still, the heads and the tails go into separate containers at the distilleries. At Deanston, everything from the wash still, at the low wines that is, goes into the faints charger. And then in the faints charger, we also get the low wines. So it's like the heads and the tails from the spirit still. So the alcohol levels in the faints charger are going up and down all the time during this process and being reused and reused and reused again before again being put back into the spirit still. And that sort of moving about of alcohol in there, the magic, the witchcraft part happens in there. And when you get this spirit that comes off at the end, the hearts of what Deanston is, it's always waxy. And that waxy character is reflected through all of our whiskies.
Yeah.
And it gives it such a versatile character. You can put Deanston into nearly any cask. I've not actually come across a cask that Deanston doesn't work well in.
I would agree.
And it doesn't. It's difficult to go over the top of the cask with Deanston, if that makes sense. You can leave something in a sherry cask for too long and it becomes too sherried, and you leave something in a bourbon cask and it become too vanilla or anything like that. Deanston just goes, nah, we're just gonna stop about here, and that'll be great. No more. We're just gonna still be Deanston. And Deanston is unique in that sense, and it's been coveted for such a long time that most of Deanston used to go to blend because of that waxy character, that resilience, that versatility, and to provide that really, really interesting mouthfeel to it. We're now being a bit more selfish at Deanston and producing those single malts. And we'll come on to the Calvados cask in a second, but no matter what Deanston you try, you're going to get that waxiness. And if you are tasting this whiskey already, run it around the inside of your mouth. It's going to stick there. It's Deanston. That's what it does. And just for fairness, we love talking about other distilleries, and they've had some amazing distilleries on Pour and Sip throughout the years. I have to say, I've been a guest many times. They've all got their interesting spirit characteristics, but only 2 in Scotland are able to do what we do. The other one being Clynelish, and if you've had Clynelish's spirits, you'll see a similarity in the spirit character. Not completely the same. I think Deanston is waxier, but you will see a similarity in those spirits.
Yeah, for sure. And like you mentioned, if people are definitely already tasting this because we are getting some incredible notes through. We've got Peter Gilmore with baked apples, biscuits, and brown sugar and cinnamon. Mike Pizarro, spice stewed fruits. Pete Cowling, apples seem to be a recurring theme tonight. They do indeed, but in very different forms, I think, actually. David Stenson can't believe how much the cider taste is coming through. It's very nice. And your Uncle Vanya has said, walking towards the Deanston distillery for the first time felt like he was in a modern Scottish fairy tale. It is so beautiful, mystical, but inviting. And Mike Farrell quickly gets the waxy mouthfeel.
I get what Uncle Vanya is saying there. It's interesting. Like you drive up to Deanston and there's the distillery there. There's the river right next to it. It's a very fast flowing river. And then you go up the hill and there's the wee village of Deanston. And used to live there was the people that used to work in the cotton mill. And now it's the people that work in the distillery. It's one of the few distillery villages that still has people that work in the distillery. Everything's become much more modern and people move elsewhere and they can travel, etc. But the people at Deanston do still live there. And when it comes to the spirit itself, I'm actually quite glad that you've saved this particular whiskey for last, because it is a cask strength.
Yeah,
we are going in there at that 57.4%, and it does really, really hit you. What I would say about this is it's not a typical Deanston. You have got quite a unique Deanston here on your Pour and Sip. The Calvados cask finish was an experiment, and there's not a lot of this whiskey kicking about. There's not a lot of Deanston in Calvados casks, and we did this as a limited edition because again, it's about that thing about Deanston is versatile. Let's try it in as many casks as we possibly can. And the Calvados, I think, worked out absolutely fantastic.
Is it returning?
Well, that's the thing. I think it probably will. And
don't make any promises.
I can't make any promises. But if you are tasting this whiskey tonight, please do add a drop of water if you haven't already to it after you've had a taste of it neat, because it does really open a little bit of that maltiness and a little bit of biscuitiness to it. You are going to get really, really heavy apples on the nose. It is super appley. And the tasting notes you provided are almost bang on with what I would say. You do get a little bit of baked apple there. There is an apple and honey feature this evening without even thinking about it.
Like a dessert in a glass, like it's absolutely lovely. And it's funny that you mentioned water, because Panda Bear has just said 1 drop of water totally changes this, puts it closer to the top for the night. So we are in contention. But if you could also just talk us through, if people don't know, like what Calvados is and, you know, how this has influenced the whiskey, the wonderful waxy Deanston whiskey.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm going off script here, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So
I don't know what your script is, so feel free.
So Calvados, the basics of Calvados are it's effectively brandy, mostly made in France. In fact, all of it made in France, I believe, by the terminology. But it's instead of grapes, they ferment effectively apples into cider, and then they distill the cider into a spirit, and then they mature it in French oak. Calvados is really, really aptly. I'm a huge Calvados fan. It is absolutely fantastic. And when I was at Thistley Cross Cider, we did make apple brandy. We couldn't call it Calvados. It's a regional protected term in terms of the spirit itself. But you do get a brandiness to it. There is a little bit of that brandiness to it on the nose, and especially on the finish there. I think there is that sort of Calvados, a little bit of cloyiness to it, but in a good way. And it's one of these things that I think Deanston and apples go well together. Anyway, if you taste our virgin oak, or if you taste our 12-year-old or our 18-year-old, you're always going to get a little bit of apples and pears out of it. And that's just due to that fruity spirit character that I talked about before. I know I talked about tropical, but as soon as it had a little bit of time to mature and whatever cask it might be, you're going to get through those sort of orchard fruits.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love it. I think it's absolutely fantastic when it comes across that way. And whiskey and apples for me goes really well together. And then I don't know if the Scottish Whisky Association will allow me to say this, but obviously we had Glen Moray earlier this evening, and when I was at Thistley Cross, we used to use the whiskey casks from Glen Moray to mature cider in, and then Glen Moray. Yeah, it's a couple of circles. The Glen Moray casks then used to go back to Glen Moray for them to mature whiskey in. Unfortunately, the Scottish Whisky Association wouldn't allow that to be called whiskey.
Where is that liquid? I bet it's delicious.
It's non-existent. I have a bottle that says whiskey on it before it was illegal.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
But it's classed as a stone fruit, and you can't put whiskey into new mixed spirit into ex-stone fruit casks, which is a shame because it is so delicious. That whiskey and apple flavor, and this is about as close as we can get.
I was going to say, like this. I mean, if this is what we're having to contend with, then I think that's okay.
I think it's absolutely all right as well. But yeah, it's a good marriage made in heaven, I think.
This is giving a lot of people they're questioning what their favorite of the night is. Mike Pizarro does not know what he's gonna choose when he buys a bottle tomorrow. And yeah, just generally there is so many good tasting notes for this that I can't read them all. But yeah, all apples, all sweetness, all delicious.
Once this particular version is gone, like I said at the start, Deanston's not a particularly old distillery in terms of Scotch whisky, established Scotch whisky distilleries. So this is 12 years old. We're not a distillery that has lots of 50-year-old, 40-year-old whiskies kicking about. We did this and it's 12 years old. This is probably the oldest Calvados you might come across from Deanston Distillery for a long time. Once it's gone, it's gone. So do please, even if you're not going to open it for a few years, just keep hold of it. It's a wonderful little dram. And Deanston, in my opinion, we have 3 distilleries at Distill. And I'm sure the folks at Pour and Sip are very familiar with the other 2, which is Bunnahabhain and Tobermory. Deanston is the rising star, and more and more people are talking about it, and more people are understanding what waxy spirit really means.
Well, on that sort of wonderful note, that we're lucky enough to have this with us, because there is never enough time. Thank you so much. I feel like I've learned quite a lot in quite a short space of time. But yeah, I think we're gonna get everyone back, go over everyone's final thoughts, the all-important quiz question, which you already know the answer to, so you will not be in contention. Hey, Andy.
Hello. Yes, that's amazing. I'm going to take my time with this one. I have to say, I've had a couple of sips, and it is super interesting. I have to say, so I'm looking forward to spending the night with that one. Actually.
If I had a bottle of this, I would never need a dessert again. It would just.
That's what I have to say. I'm going to get the gang back together.
Yes.
The gang. Here's Emma.
Busy little screen.
Aaron
First time I've
coming.
ever been in a gang.
Stuart coming. And Jake's not usually on this, but I'm going to add him. And here.
Oh, he's got the hat still on.
We ever have this many people on the screen at once?
Maybe once or twice.
Okay. Well, I mean, anyway, that has been an amazing bumper session. I am totally aware of time. So thank you so much for staying with us. But I hope you found everything really interesting and tried some amazing whiskies today. As always, I think it's probably best. Oh, no. I think we should start with the quiz question, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, here we are, everyone. Listen close. So because this is one of the rarer boxes in Pour and Sip that is all Scotch whiskies, we thought we would throw a little curveball in the questions for you. So since Pour and Sip came to be in September 2020, so just shy over 2 years now, how many Scotch whiskies have we had throughout those 2 and a bit years, including this month's box? How many Scotch whiskies has Pour and Sip featured since September 2020?
That is a great question. How much time have they got to answer this question?
Oh, I don't know.
We just give them a minute.
Give them a minute or two.
Are we saying one answer per person as well? So you
One
can't keep
answer
guessing.
per person.
Yeah,
guys.
you can't just go up on the numbers, guys. Otherwise, that's just process of elimination.
Yeah, guys. So yeah, you got a minute to answer that. And what can they
Think
win
long
again?
and hard.
Jess?
Sorry?
What can they win again?
So if you are the first person to guess the right answer, then you will get to pick any current bottle off the Pour and Sip store. And that is your prize.
There's a prize and a half. So
Yeah.
as soon as they're ready, guys, and go. I'm expecting this to come flooding in. I have to read.
Yeah.
Jake, are you going to read?
Andy, you were way off, so I will be very intrigued how quickly people get this. But I feel like Pour and Sippers are a very clued up bunch. So
Yeah. Unlike me, who's not clear.
I think you just got overexcited.
I just got overexcited. It's felt like 4 years. So
Yeah.
we'll give you a little bit more time. Are answers coming in, Jake?
They are flying in. Bear
They
with.
are flying in. So
And if
before I
anyone
start-
is not fussed about the quiz, then we're going to ask you the mean question that what your favourite was tonight. So ponder that.
Andy's asking Scotch whiskies. Yeah,
So
it's,
guys, we
it's
need to
just
answer
Scotch
for-
whiskies, isn't it?
yeah,
Yes, just Scotch whiskies. Because if it was just drams, then you could all work that out with maths.
Not just all
so-
whiskies. Yeah.
with simple maths. Some people are, wow, some people well off. Yeah, so we are going to ask that mean question Jess has just mentioned. So another question for you guys before I ask a question for our wonderful guests this evening. And none of them are going to be offended by this question. So please also let us know, along with how many Scotch whiskies have been included in Pour and Sip box, what has been your favourite from tonight's box? I've seen a lot of you saying that tonight's box has been one of your favourites that we've done at Pour and Sip. There have been some incredible whiskies tonight. So please do let us know which has been your favourite tonight and why. Thank you. Jake.
No one's got it yet, as far as I
really?
can tell. Yeah. Some real close ones, but yeah, I'm just teasing everyone.
If we don't have it in the next 30 seconds, can it be the closest to?
Yeah, we'll have to do that. Although there's some very close ones, so I don't know.
Oh, for sure. I think some people are pretty close.
But there's also quite a range here, so that doesn't give anything away.
No, exactly.
Yeah, they are
Yeah, I
really
think
all
that's-
over the shop for guesses, aren't they?
Yeah, I kind of wish I hadn't told you guys earlier, so you could have just thrown your 2 cents in. Like I ruined it. I'm so sorry.
All good. I think they're slowing down, so let's just.
Okay.
If you're...
There's definitely
Wow.
folks. There's definitely folks going through. Quick, how many YouTube live sessions have they had, and then do a random.
Yeah.
So, if we are going off the first person to get the closest guess, no one has got it so far, which they haven't. And if you sent them through in the correct order, Jake, which I assume you have.
Or they asked, there's been a flood of further answers just in now. So
Okay.
I can't remember what the correct answer is. Guess is the.
Where is your dramatic music?
Well, we thought we'd get you guys to a cappella it, actually. Surprise.
See, people are
Okay,
having multiple guesses
one's-
now. I think you're going to have to call it, Jess.
Yeah, okay, fellas. Well, this was a good question because no one's got it, but it's going to have to be Steve Hickson is the closest because you guessed 85 and it was 84. So that was the closest, quickest answer. Yeah, no one quite got it. So many 82s, so many 85s, no 84s. So we have had 84 Scotch whisky. And he guessed like 190 or something. So
yeah, well, I don't feel so bad now. Pat Cowling guessed 410. So
I had 108.
So
yeah.
I mean, a lot of you got very close, I have to say. Like Mike Pizarro, I'm sorry, Mike, but you were out by the same amount, but you were just 2 after. So I'm really sorry about that. So congratulations, Steve, who will be able to
Happy Christmas
from the Pour and Sip store. Sounds like it's going to be a great Christmas after all. So, yes, just to finish up, we're going to ask you guys the horrible question that we always do. Let us know your favourites. And I want to ask our guests tonight what they're going to be drinking on Christmas Day. What's their go-to? So I'll start with you, Emma.
Oh, that's mean. That's so mean. I'm gonna be on brand. We've just released some new Cask Strength Warehouse 1 editions, and it's probably gonna be one. Oh, one's really hard to choose. New Amarone finish, probably.
Oh, that sounds great. There's a great Aaron Amarone finish, which is amazing. So I really like that. So I'd be really interested to try that one.
It's superb.
Yes. Okay. That sounds wonderful. Jess, what about you as you're next on my screen?
Oh gosh, what will I be drinking? I didn't think I was going to ask this. I thought everyone else is going to have to prep.
Oh, you are.
I think I am going off brand, and I'm sorry to everyone here, but I recently got a bottle of the Tale of the Forest from Glen, and I feel like a smoky sort of botanical vibe is going to be right up my street on Christmas Day. So yes, and probably I'll take some Pour and Sip drams with me.
Yeah, of course, to be on brand. Aaron, what about you?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, but it's like choosing your favourite child, isn't it?
Well,
we all have one.
We all have one.
We all have one. We all have one. Yeah, for me, on brand, Dalmore cigar malt. I think it's an absolute cracker. It's just rich, round, fruity, red fruit, lovely, chewy goodness, and then there'll probably be some cheeky Lagavulin in there at some point as well.
Perfect for Christmas Day. That Dalmore cigar malt, beautiful. After Christmas dinner, cigar Dalmore, cigar malt. That sounds like a great Christmas day. So very good. Stuart, what about you?
I'm gonna stay on brand as well.
You guys, for God's sake.
I'll give you an off-brand as well after. Yeah, so we one of the Mossburn vintage casks of Craigellachie finished in Oloroso Hoggies. One of the recent ones that we released this year. Brilliant dram, really, really good. And off-brand, it's gonna be seaweed and Christmas cake. I'm a massive fan of seaweed and eons, massive fan of Christmas cake, etc. Yeah, big. So yeah.
He's only saying that because he's on a master.
I was going to say that's still on brand.
I know my brand though. That's your brand, but yeah, that's no, I absolutely. The seaweed and eons, I think, is such a cracking dram, especially for the price. Yeah, I think great dram.
That sounds amazing. Jake, what about yourself?
I feel like I should be more on brand now. Well, actually, to tell you what I've got, as well as the rest of this butterscotch, which I think is gonna go into the Christmas cabinet, is I had a Master of Malt green spot, an exclusive Van Santo cask recently, which I've got a little bit left of. So I'm a big fan of Irish whiskies and single pot still. So I think that's probably one I'm saving for the big day.
That sounds wonderful, I have to say. And last but not least, actually, I'm going to say mine as well. But Luke, what about yourself?
So I'm going to give you my own brand choice, but almost my brand choice, as in like me staying on brand about Apple this evening. My on brand choice from Deanston. If you haven't had it yet, guys, the Deanston 2000 Organic is honestly probably one of the best whiskies that Distell produces out of the 3 distilleries this year. It is absolutely stunning. It's like a sticky toffee pudding with vanilla ice cream on top. It's really, really good. Very Christmassy. But staying on brand with the apples and things like that, I'm going to go off brand and go with the Compass Box's Orchard House. It tastes exactly what the label says to you. It is really appley. It's really delicious. I tasted it at the whiskey show this year. Stuart, I don't think I had a chance to go and taste upstairs right enough, but it was absolutely brilliant.
Okay, lots of apples going on. Here, this night has been
an apple a day, guys. An apple a day.
Those are all sound absolutely wonderful. I'm sure you guys are burning to hear what I'm going to be drinking.
Yes, Andy.
So I'm going to tell you. I think for me, I always have my Edward's Hour straight from the cask. For me, that is like that huge Oloroso sherry, and that will be after Christmas dinner, late in the evening, and that's going to be my dram of choice.
Very nice. You had to have a good one lined up to ask the question.
I had to have a good one lined up, and that is a special one. It's one of my absolute favourites. So, talking of that, Jess, do you want to read through some of these these winners for tonight? Guys, you're not going to be offended, are you, if anyone's chosen?
Absolutely not, no.
I have to say, the Mannochmore is getting a lot of love.
Yeah. And
so is the Tamnavulin. They're sort of dominating the stakes tonight. But Butterscotch, I mean, they've all got shout outs, to be honest.
No, but we need to know it. We need to know it by the actual amount here, because this is important stuff. We need to know who wins.
I think
Andy's always so mean.
I don't want to do this. I think the Mannochmore might take the cake.
There's so many. Yours
a cracker. I have to say that was quite a treat.
That's not true. I mean, Ian Turner, Deanston, followed by the Whiskey range. Simon Wow, I'm surprised at that number. Just goes to show all the great drams we've had from around the globe. Very true. Still talking about the thing. Steve Conwell is Mannochmore for me. TSCD, Butterscotch, and all was my favourite tonight. But honestly, all very strong contenders again. Steve Hickson, Tamnavulin tonight, even though cannot stand red wine. So there you go, Steve Hickson. The Tamnavulin red wine cask has transferred you and won you over to red wine. Mike Pizarro, Mannochmore was my favourite, but the Deanston was very close and it was a great box. Mike Pizarro, man, out by seconds. I can see and hear the frustration in your voice. If you'd just been literally a millisecond earlier, you would have won that prize. Panda Bear, Tamnavulin favourite tonight. Your Uncle Ben, you love the Mossburn tonight. I'm a regular drinker of all brands and expressions, so big thank you for everyone joining as guests tonight. Alice, I'm going for Mossburn tonight, but all very good. Mossburn for the interest, but Tamnavulin, a second for everyday drinking. That's just the select few. I think, guys, it's probably time for us to wrap this up. This might go down as one of the longest pour and sips that we've done. But thank you for sticking around with us, and thank you to all our guests tonight who've been absolutely amazing. It's been amazing to hear from all of you.
It's such a joy.
And I think we should wish everybody San Javan and Merry Christmas.
Yes. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Great Christmas,
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas. Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.